Hi guys, so you know what time it is. It's Hot English Topics with Miss Simon, and today is Friday. So we're going to be reading a story because we did elements of a story, but now we're going to be reading The Red Room, the story that I sent you guys that I'm sure everyone read. And we're going to be analyzing the elements that we spoke about in prior videos in this story. So stay tuned. The Red Room. I can promise you, said I, that it will take a very tangible ghost to frighten me. And I stood up before the fire with the glass in my hand. It's your own choosing, said the man with the withered arm. If, said I, you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will make myself comfortable there. Alright guys, so we're just going to butt into the story for a little bit. We already have characters. The man, the person who inside the house, the man with the withered arm. So you have two people here so far. The man who visited with the glass in his hand and the one with the withered arm. We also have setting. They are in a house, right? And they're going into this haunted room. The whole story is about this red room. So that is the setting of the story. Remember, setting is time and place. And the characters are the people in the story. Let's go on as we follow the plot. See what I did there? We're going into the rising action soon. So we're now setting the work for the rest of the story. So let's go and introduce some drama and stuff. You know, some rising action. If, said I, you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will make myself comfortable there. The old man jerked his head back so suddenly that it startled me. Are you really going? Like you mad or what? Right? This is what I came for. Remember when you had to use dialogue to tell me about your character? So far we can see that this man is very brave. And the old man is he's cautious, and he's cautioning the man about the red room. So we already know a little bit about their traits. Okay, the door to the red room and the steps up to it were in a shadowy corner. Descriptive words earlier, the people describing the setting, again spooky here now. So let's just read that one more time so you can hear how you can describe your setting. The door to the red room and the steps up to it were in a shadowy corner. It was dark and scary. I moved my candle from side to side in order to see clearly. You see how I can visualize what the writer is putting here for me to see? That's what you need to do. Write in a way that the person reading can be in the story, can visualize what you're setting up for them. I entered, closed the door behind me at once, turned the key I found in the lock, and stood with the candle viewing the scene. The great red room of Lorraine Castle in which the young Duke had died. You're not going to be able to draw this in the story, so you need to describe it using your adjectives. But here we can see and hear what the writer is trying to portray to us as the readers. Okay, so the young Duke had died there. We introduced another character, or at least someone in the story who was supposed to have been dead, right? And we're in Lorraine Castle, which is the setting. Okay, or rather in which he had begun dying, for he had opened the door and fallen headlong down the steps. I began to walk about the room. I pulled up the blinds and examined the windows, leant forward and looked up the blackness of the wide chimney, and tapped the dark oak paneling for any secret opening. The fire was laid, and I lit it. When it was burning well, I stood with my back to it and looked at the room again. So now it's well lit. It's not dark anymore, right? I had pulled up an armchair and a table, setting time and place, to form a kind of barricade before me. And on this lay my revolver. I felt that nothing supernatural could happen. Kind of spiriting here. The reds and blacks of the room troubled me. Even with 7 candles, the place was dim. So it's still kind of dark out there. I recalled the candles I had seen in the passage, meaning in the passageway. Carrying a candle and leaving the door open, I returned with as many as 10. 10 candles, remembering, These I lit and placed where the shadows lay deepest. Right, so wherever it was real dark, they light candles. The room was now quite bright. There was something very cheery and reassuring in those little flames. So he was feeling happy, setting the tone, the ambience. It was after midnight that the candle in the corner suddenly went out. Taking the matches from the table, I walked across the room to relight it. My first match would not strike. And as I succeeded with a second, something happened. Guys, and now you're setting up yourself to hear, oh my gosh, what's happening next? That's what you need to do to the reader. Keep them on the edge, keep them on a cliffhanger, keep them thinking about what's going to happen next. Don't bore them to death. Right? Okay. 2 candles on the little table by the fireplace went out. And next 2 candles, I walked back, relit one, and as I did so, I saw one of the candles by the mirrors go out, then another. There was no mistake about it. The flames vanished as if the wicks had been nipped suddenly between a finger and a thumb. This won't do, said I. The first one and then another candle on the shelf followed. What's up? I cried. Use some dialogue even if it's talking to yourself in the story, right? At that, the candle on the wardrobe went out. My hands now trembled as I tried to relight the candles. I seemed to be succeeding when 4 lights vanished at once in different corners of the room. As I stood undecided, an invisible hand seemed to sweep out 2 candles on the table. With a cry of terror, I dashed to the corner and then to the window, relighting 3 as 2 more vanished. It was like a ragged storm cloud sweeping out the stars. Ah, a simile, using like or as to make a comparison. Very nice. I was now almost frantic with the horror of the coming darkness. He didn't just say I was afraid of the darkness. Boring. I was now almost frantic with the horror of the coming darkness. I bruised myself on the table. I sent a chair headlong. I stumbled and fell. But there was light still in the room. A red light. The fire. I turned to where the flames were still dancing, made 2 steps towards them, and the flames vanished. Darkness closed about me like the shutting of an eye. I flung out, as an simile earlier, darkness closed around me like the shutting of an eye. You can't see nothing, right? Can't see anything. I flung out my arms in an effort to thrust the blackness away from me, and lifting up my voice, screamed with all my might. I think I must have staggered to my feet. I know I thought suddenly of the moonlit corridor, and, with my arms over my face, made a run for the door. But I had forgotten the position of the door and struck myself heavily against the corner of the bed. I have a vague memory of battering myself in the darkness as I darted to and fro, of a heavy blow to the head and a horrible feeling of falling. I opened my eyes in daylight. So it was the next morning, setting again, changing the setting from darkness to the next morning, which is bright. My head was roughly bandaged, and the man with the withered arm was watching my face. I looked about me, trying to remember what had happened. Where am I asked. They told me then of the red room, We found you at dawn, said he, and there was blood on your forehead and lips. You believe now that the room is haunted? The old man asking him this now, right? Yes. And you have seen it? And we who have lived here all our lives have never set eyes upon it, because we have never dared. Tell us, is it truly the old earl who... No, said I, it is not. Well, it is the worst of all things that haunt us, and that is fear. Fear that will not have light or sound, that deafens and darkens and overwhelms. It follows me through the corridor. It fought against me in the room. That is it, said he. I knew that was it. A power of darkness. It lurks there always. You can feel it in the daytime, even of a bright summer's day. There is fear in that room, black fear. And there will be, so long as this house endures. Now remember, we were talking about theme in our last video. Theme. This is the message or the story that you, the message of your story. The main idea. Now, theme could be something like friendship, or loyalty, or courage. In this case, they were talking about fear. Fear was the theme in this story. The rise in action led up to him fighting with himself in the room. The conflict was that he was battering himself. And in the resolution, after he was bandaged and can remember much, he realized, but wait, it have no earl wanting nobody inside there, right? In the resolution, they were talking about how fear will always be there. More or less, it's up to you if you want to live in the shadows and let your fear rule you and destroy you physically and mentally. So I hope that you guys saw some elements of a story in the Red Room between seeing characters, the old man, the earl who was dead, even though he wasn't a round character, he's just a background character in the story, or a flat character. He was still playing a huge part in the story in terms of the fear that you could feel from, you know, being in that room. Then you had the main character, the protagonist, which was the guy who had visited the house and spent the night in the Red Room. So technically there were three characters, but they were saying that we who have lived here all our lives in this house, meaning there were other characters, but it just didn't mention them. We don't want to talk about everybody. Remember, I said keep it to a minimum so you can always follow each of your characters without getting too, you know, lost. It's not a Netflix series, right? So those were characters. The setting had to do with the darkness of the room, then when it was lit with the candles, and when it was dark again when the candles went out, and then daylight the next morning, and how it had the fireplace and the chair and the candles. All of that leads up to the setting. Now you're not thinking about a school, not so. You're thinking about a haunted room. So that's setting for you. Plot, like we said, there was the intro where you met the old man and the protagonist, and then it led into the rising action, which was him going into the room and then realizing it was dark, putting some candles around, you know, and then like having them be blown out one after the other. It's probably just the wind. All of that would have led up to the conflict where he was battering himself, meaning he was beating up himself more or less in the room. And like I said, in the resolution, everything came to a calm and resolved itself, and they realized what the real issue was, right? And we said theme was fear. This story was told in, let me just make sure, the first person, because he was talking about himself. He said, let me see if I can find an example for you. You know that it's told in the first person. First person is when you're talking about yourself, right? And he says, I entered, closed the door behind me. So it's I and me. Then again, he said, I turned to where the flames were. I sent a chair headlong. I stumbled. I opened my eyes in the daylight. I looked about me. So it's told in the first person. Now, if he was saying that James stumbled in darkness, and James went to the house with the old man, and James spent the night in the haunted house, room, Red Room, then it will be the third person. Remember, you're talking about yourself is first person, and when you're talking about other people is the third person, right? So I hope you guys were able to follow the story as you were supposed to have already read it in any case. And I'll see you next time for Hot English Topics with Miss Simon, out and bad.